So I'm in a space right now where my condo and apartment and my kitchen is extremely loud, given there's like taking down a tree and there's like laundry happening, and it's just really, really loud there today. So I came to the library, the local library, and I'm in the local history room, and I'm just going to record this really fast for you guys here. So it looks like, yeah, it's been loud. Okay. So I had my business coach say to me that I should have a discussion on how to find a therapist. And I think that's actually a really valuable discussion. Finding a therapist is really hard, and I had a really hard time finding one myself. It's been a journey, and I've learned a lot along the way, so I'd like to share with you what I've learned about what people say and what people do and how they treat their clients and what's really important. My main advice when going to find a therapist is to go in and consider it like a date. You're going on a date. It's a first date. There's no obligation on either side to continue seeing each other. There's no need to like feel bad about whether or not it doesn't work after the first date or the second date, right? Like you're just going and exploring, and you're just having an explore. There's no obligation to stay with a therapist if you've gone on a date with them and they don't fit. It happens. And you need to find somebody who you are comfortable with sharing your most intimate things, and know that it's going to be handled well, and it's going to be respected and appreciated, and not made to feel like you're a terrible person because you made mistakes and you're learning from them, hopefully learning from them. I have had a number of really bad therapists. I have asked friends for recommendations on therapists, and the therapist I have now came from a recommendation. I asked a friend, and we had another friend, and I'm going to call her Angela. Not her name. Her name is not Angela. But Angela had a therapist also named her name. So if her name is Angela, then the therapist's name is Angela. And so we refer to the therapist as Dr. Angela. Dr. Angela says blah, 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 and Dr. Angela says blah, 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 and Dr. Angela says blah, 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 right? Opposed to Angela saying these things, because they're two different people. And it was a way to distinguish who was talking. I am really grateful for my therapist now, because I was able to call her up and say, hey, can I get 2 sessions with you today? I really need to come talk to you. And I went and I met with her right after my dad died, and I debriefed it. And then right after that, she was like, you know what? Well, you're struggling with grief. Why don't we meet every week? And then she was like, I think we should go back to every other week. And I still see my therapist every other week. And sometimes I walk in and I have absolutely nothing to talk about. And sometimes I walk in and I have absolutely everything to talk about. And when things heat up, I go to every week. And when things cool off, I go down to every other week. My dad went to a therapist every month. But finding the right person is really, really important. And if you're not comfortable with them, you are not obligated to stay with them in any way. I went to a therapist for a while. I went to somebody in the church. So when I was, I had stuck a fundamentalist stick up my ass when I was 15. And I thought, you know, when I got older, like I was in my 20s, I was still fundamentalist stick up my ass. And I really wanted a therapist who was a Christian. I wanted somebody who was coming at this world from the same perspective I had. So I talked to one of the women at my church and I said, I want you to be my therapist. And she said, I can't do that because of dual relationships and it's just not allowed. But I can recommend somebody for you. So she recommended somebody for me. That somebody was absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible. And I stayed with them, and I came with them with a very specific goal in mind. And she didn't deal with my goal at all, like not at all. Like I was having some trauma experiences and she wanted to deal with like something else altogether, which was also partly a trauma experience, but it had nothing to do with why I was meeting with her, really, honestly. And what she wanted to focus on was something that I had already focused on. And she gave me like this workbook to work through. And it wasn't even a workbook on what I wanted help with. So my last session with her, she turns to me and she says something about, and remember she's a Christian, about the importance of Mary and how the Christian Protestant church has negated Mary's importance and how it's important to like place emphasis on Mary. And that's like one of the last things she said to me. And it was like a shame, gross moment. And I walked out of there feeling like I had done something wrong. I hadn't. That was all her transference. I learned a whole bunch through like, therapy school. And I learned a whole bunch about like how to be a good therapist. And this was the exact opposite of like how to be a good therapist. Like she did all the things, maybe even was ethically wrong. She might have been ethically wrong. And so I wasn't in therapy for a while because I didn't know how to handle it. And then after cancer, Dad was like, let's get you into therapy again. And so he paid for me to go to a therapist who also gave me, I felt like, a little bit of grief for some of the things my non-Christian friends said to me when I started to question my faith. And she might have even given me some grief for even questioning my faith to begin with. And she might have even questioned me while I was removing the fundamentalist stick from my ass and I walked away from God. There are some qualities in a therapist you really want to look for, and one of them is unconditional positive regard and a mutual respect. Somebody who you know is in your corner and really is fighting for you and wants the best for you. Somebody who wants to come alongside and make you the best version of you. Somebody who will believe in you and who knows that you're really doing the best you can with what you've been given and has your highest good in mind and isn't going to cut you down. These things are really important when you're finding a therapist. Finding somebody who's going to be there for you and is understanding and who will make time if you're in crisis. And who's also going to be somebody who can handle all of your things, right? In a way that's like gracious and kind, but at the same point is able to call you on your bullshit. Because we need both. We need like gracious and kind and compassionate and understanding, and at the same point being like, but you don't get to hide. You don't get to hide behind that. If that makes sense. I think it does. If you go on your first date with your therapist and you realize that like they're challenging you more than you're comfortable with, well, a first date with a therapist really should be rapport building. It should be finding out who you are, what your goals are, what you're looking for, whether or not the two of you are compatible together, whether or not you're going to have good dialogue, and whether or not this person can support you or not. It's an interview. That is what the first date with a therapist is. It's an interview. You are interviewing them and they are interviewing you. And you're both coming at this with your eyes wide open and thinking, is this going to work for both of us? That's what you're doing. You are creating the dialogue. So, as you're doing that, be aware that if they're challenging you, the question is, are they challenging you too soon? And then if they are challenging you, and it's not too soon, or if it is too soon, how do they handle your defensiveness? How do they handle your resistance? How do they handle your excuses? Because we all have defensiveness and resistance and excuses. It's a thing we all have, right? Or do they just like rub you the wrong way completely and their energy is just all wrong and not the right person for you? That also really matters. So I'm going to tell you a quick story. Last year I was working as a school therapist. And in my role, I had to call a child's psychiatrist. And this was like a world, I don't know if they're world renowned, but they're region renowned psychiatrist for children. And this child is transgender and has a dead name. And so I called the psychiatrist and I said, I'm calling about, and I gave their name, their chosen name, their name of who they want to be known as. And the psychiatrist says, I don't know who that person is. So I had to like reach back somewhere really back far in my head and pull out their dead name and said, well, I'm calling about this person. And he goes, oh, yeah. And then in the middle of the conversation, I'm using this child's chosen pronouns, which are they, them. At which point the psychiatrist cuts me off and tells me that he gets confused by they, them pronouns because they're not specific and it sounds like it's a group of people. So now the psychiatrist has told me that he's using the dead name and he doesn't honor their pronouns. And the psychiatrist has also told me that the child doesn't speak to them. To which I said, maybe that's why the kid's not talking to you, because you're not honoring their name and you're not honoring who they are. He got mad at me. And then I called, and then his mom called and said, why, or their mom called. At that time it was their, now it's his. I'm working, I'm human too. And their mom called me and said, why are you calling the psychiatrist? The psychiatrist called me, why are you calling the psychiatrist? What are you trying to figure out? And I told the mom about my conversation with the psychiatrist and about how the psychiatrist doesn't honor her child's pronouns, the they, them, doesn't honor them, and doesn't honor their chosen name. And that might be why her child isn't getting the help she needs, they need, he needs, who needs, from the psychiatrist. Yes, it's confusing, but yes, it matters. And yes, you need to figure it out, right? It's okay to bumble, and try. It's okay to bumble and try. It's not okay to not try at all. And so I basically told the mom, you need a new psychiatrist. And her response was, well, he's renowned in the region, he's the best known in this area for this, and like, he's been with my child for a really long time, and he's making things happen with blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but your kid's not talking to him. Your kid's not being honest with him. And he's not actually serving your child because this psychiatrist doesn't care enough to learn about what really matters to your child. Just because you've been with somebody for a really long time, if that therapist isn't serving you, it's time to go. Just because you've been with somebody for a really long time doesn't necessarily mean you owe them anything. You are hiring somebody for a job, and the job is as a therapist. If you hired somebody as a plumber, you would expect them to do a job and do it well within a certain price point, right? And we all know plumbers are pretty expensive. Same thing with like electricians and masons and carpenters and handymen, right? They all have an hourly wage. And some of them take insurance. Just like therapists, some of them take insurance. If you are meeting with a therapist for the first time and that therapist gives you a session for free, so I am starting to take coaching clients, and you can go on to Social Work Your Life and pick up a 20-minute session with me. And the two of us will have a dialogue and we'll figure out whether or not I'm gonna be a good fit for you, because I'm not gonna be a good fit for everybody. I'm just not. What you're looking for may not be what I'm offering, and who I am may not work for you. Like, true facts, right? I'm like $3,750 for 12 sessions. And if you're 2 sessions in with me and you're like, Kim, you're not working for me, like this isn't working for me, then okay, you get the rest of the money back. Like, we did 2 sessions and then I'll give you the rest of the money back. Like, if I'm not working for you, I'm not working for you. And that's just it. I'm giving you a service. So when you go to a therapist, normally most therapists are like, they charge you by the hour, $150, $250, $350, depending on the therapist, right? So the question then becomes like, do you have to go back to them? No. Do you have to see them every week? No. Can you see them monthly? Yes. What if they're not doing their job? Then fire them and find somebody else who is gonna help you. If you've been with somebody for a year or 2 and you haven't progressed and you haven't made any gains and it hasn't made that big of a difference, then there's no reason to stay there. I have a therapist, and I have like an intuition coach, and I have a nutritionist, and I have all of these self-help people in my life right now. They're all serving different purposes, and some of them overlap, and some of their perspectives are different than the perspective that I get from certain people. And that's important, and that's good. So some tips and tricks on how to find a therapist. 1, find out if they'll give you a free half session. Like if their sessions are normally 45 minutes, ask if they'll do a 20-minute session for free so you can go and try them on. I have been dating a lot recently, and I know within 10 minutes whether or not this person is somebody I want to spend the rest of the date with, right? I know that. And sometimes it takes 2 or 3 dates, and then I'm like, no, not my person, right? So don't be afraid to go on 2 or 3 dates with the therapist and then be like, you know what? You're not my person, right? Fine, it's totally fine. But see if you can get 20 minutes first for free as a try-on period between the two of you to see how you connect. The second thing I would recommend is that when you go into it, you think of it as, I am hiring you for a job. And how well do you do that job? How well do you listen to me? How much do you support me? Do you give me unconditional positive regard? Do you appreciate my autonomy? Are you trying to push me to be a better human being? Are you pushing me too hard? Do I not feel respected? Do I feel overwhelmed? Do I feel like your goals and my goals no longer line up? And if your goals and the therapist's goals don't line up, get out of there, because they're not going to serve the thing that you're there for, because they've got their own agenda. It should be your agenda. Okay. And the money matters. Let's be honest. My therapist, I forgot to pay her for a month, maybe a month and a half. And I was like, oh my gosh, I owe you a lot of money. And she's like, you do. So I just sent it to her. But if the person is giving you what you consider high quality work, then that is something that, you pay for. You do pay for that. You pay for high quality work. But if you're feeling like your therapist is charging you a lot and they're not delivering on the quality that you would expect for the amount that you're paying, then again, you can talk about rates with them, or you can find somebody who's going to give you the quality that you're looking for. And money is a tough conversation to have for everybody. Money is not an easy conversation. Nobody really likes talking about money. It's uncomfortable. However, and can be awkward. However, it's a real thing. We all have it, and we all need it, and we all struggle with it in some ways. Some of us have more of it than others, and some of us are more flush, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But yes, money is an issue. And if you're spending a lot of money and you're not thinking you're getting the quality you need, you're under no obligation to stay. And I think that's the thing I want you to hear the most. You're under no obligation to stay. You're under no obligation to stay. You don't owe them anything. They are just a person doing a job. And if you had a carpenter that did a shitty ass job, you would fire the carpenter and get another carpenter in. It's what you would do. If your therapist is doing a shitty ass job, get another therapist in. If you're looking for somebody who's going to guide you and help you, I always ask friends for recommendations. And I'm terrified my therapist is going to retire. I talked to her about that. She's like, yeah, I'm beginning to cut down my hours. I was like, no. She's like, but I'm keeping a couple of people on. I'm like, ee. And she's keeping me on, I think. But when the time comes for me to find a new therapist, I will ask her for recommendations, maybe 2 or 3, and I will go on dates with these other therapists to find out which one's going to be the right one for me. Personal growth is important, and getting support is necessary. But I will also say the wrong therapist can be damaging. I'm not even making that up. The wrong therapist can be damaging. So go have a couple sessions and then regroup with yourself. Are they working? Do you trust them? Do you feel respected? Do you feel like they have unconditional positive regard? Do you feel like you have a mutual understanding with the person? Do you feel like they're on your team, or do you think they're fighting you? Are they like the kind of coach that just yells all the time and makes you feel terrible about yourself? Because that's no good. Working it out, right? Working it out with yourself, working it out with a therapist or not, working out this life. We all need support, and we need support from the right people, And if your therapist isn't the right person, don't stay with them. If they are literally causing damage, get out, and go find somebody who will be the person that you need. And so I just encourage you to search and look around and find somebody who's going to believe in you and get you from where you are to where you want to be. And they're going to be able to help you move the mountains and move them or climb them out of so that they are no longer a hindrance between where you are and the person you are dreaming of becoming. So there it is. Thank you. And we'll talk to you soon.